So, Sam Hagglund, my name. I work as General Secretary for the European Federation of Building and Woodworkers in Brussels, dealing mostly with EU matters, mostly lobbying and also some campaign activities.
What's your union's position on Brexit?
It's hard to say exactly, but we were basically talking and lobbying for the UK to stay, of course, in the European Union. We thought it would be best for the UK and for the workers of the UK and also for the rest of Europe. So we were not very happy with what happened. And now we try to work with damage control so that it won't be worse than it is today for the workers of the UK, so that UK will not be some kind of haven for the employers that want to cut wages and working conditions, and that should be a reason that employers are attracted to the UK. We don't want that, because that would negatively affect the rest of Europe as well. So we try to keep both the UK position in our mind at the same time looking at the effects of the rest of Europe. And so there are complicated things going on, especially now when we don't know what the actual negotiations will end up with. And the recent proposal of a parliament say in the end result, which we think it's normal and that's fine. But what that's yes or no, especially what no means, that is a bit unclear according to what we understand at least.
What sort of deal would you like to see between the EU and the UK?
Well, basically, I would like to see a deal which is as close as possible to the UK staying in the EU, that all the rights that you have got through a number of EU legislations that you've taken over, that they would stay, that you would keep these rights. Also rights connected to the free movement. I know that this is sensitive, but well, basically as much as possible of what we see as the positive side of the EU cooperation, that you would be able to keep these things and not lose them when you exit. So that is, and of course we don't want the workers of the UK to be hurt by companies. I mean, a bad deal would mean that companies invest in other countries and they stop investing in the UK, and that's not bad for the UK, and it's not good for the rest of Europe either, because that would lead in the end to a kind of employer's haven with low conditions and not as good rights as the rest of Europe. So we would like to have as fair deal as possible when you take into account that workers in the UK, even though you're outside of the formal cooperation of the European Union, should have the right, as the rest of Europe, to a kind of basic fundamental system of fundamental rights and conditions.
What do you think of Unite's proposals to put checks and balances on the exploitation of migrant workers coming into the UK, and to safeguard UK construction workers through making sure that there's union agreements for all migrant workers coming into the UK?
I think this is very important, and this is at the core of what we as EFBWW are working with at European level. As you know, there is now a revision of the Posting of Workers Directive on the table, in fact negotiated between the Parliament, the Council and the Commission. And that is a bit surprising, maybe a very, very good proposal. What they say there is there has to be equal remuneration on the basis of host country conditions. So if that would be applied to the UK, it should be negotiated wages and not even minimum wages when they come here. It should be not possible to circumvent the rules and regulations by making all kind of fake posting and triangular arrangement with different countries and temporary employment agency, etc., etc. In that case, the full conditions of the host country should apply. and I could go on a long list of good proposals that the European Parliament now is taking into the trialogue. And that is a bit these proposals a bit similar to what you want from the side of Unite to be applied in your country. So I think I fully support. I don't know the details of that, but what you're telling me that is something very much in line with what we are working for, also at European level.
I suppose there's this idea of splitting off from leaving the EU has caused, especially in the UK, some to see the Europeans as adversaries. Yeah. Why is it important that unions and workers, both in the EU and the UK, work together and continue the relationship that they have?
I think for the UK and also from us Europeans from other countries, I'm a Swede, I'm living in Belgium now, we see it even more important that Unite is working in our federation and collaborating with the friends, trade unionists in other countries, because now we don't want a split of Europe in terms of different levels of fundamental rights. That would be a disaster. So let's hope we could stop a development in that direction. So I think this is even more important now. And I look at other affiliates we have which are not in a country that is an EU member. For instance, the Norwegians, they are extremely active in our federation. They go into directives and they go into what we are doing, they participate a lot. And that's why, because it affects them, even they are outside of the EU, it affects them a lot. The problem for them, and they don't have a process of having anything to say when EU regulations are being shaped. Mm-hmm. And you might come in the same situation, even though you don't have a Norwegian agreement as an end result. But you might also come into that situation, which means that you need to have even closer relationship to us from that very reason, that you need to also look into what's happening and give your points of view of how do we get the EU rules and regulations to stop exploitation. And if we have that from you or from our affiliates in Germany, which is an EU member, we will work for it as much if it comes from you as from the others. So that's why I think there's absolutely no argument for you to down prioritize the EU-related trade union work now, but the other way around, I would say.
My final question is, how vulnerable do you think British workers will be outside of the EU when the UK government is striking trade deals that are maybe based on TTIP or CETA with...
The worst scenario, I think, would be that you give up Europe and you just look at the Trumpian US, what they will offer, because that will risk to completely give up a lot of the achievements that you have during the last 25 years in taking from Europe. So what I'm afraid of is that failed negotiations would lead to you getting closer to the present administration and the policy of the US. They will not last forever, we know that, but they might last some more years. So that is something I'm a bit worried for, and I think it would also be a very negative development for the UK workers if this would happen.
Why? What
because the trade deals, possible trade deals that you will strike with the US, they will definitely not include a lot of these worker protections and health and whatever social, let's say, regulations or protection areas that you would find in other types of agreements. And they would risk to be very much, let's say, employer-friendly in the sense that we leave aside all the workers' priorities, but look into what is the gain for the company on these agreements. So well, we don't know about this, but this is my fear.
Great stuff. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
No, it's just that I'm very happy to be invited here, and I also saw now for the first time that the integration of our former member UCAT with Unite seems to be working very well, and it means that you have a very strong sector which deals with construction, and that's very good for me, and that's very good for the federation.